The rain used to be my comfort. As a little girl, I loved the sound of it against our roof. It felt like a song only for me. But that changed as I grew older. The same rain that once soothed me now carried a weight, reminding me of the coldness inside my own home. My family was falling apart, and I could feel every crack in our lives widening each time thunder rolled across the sky. My father was not always the way he is now. People in our neighborhood used to respect him, a hard-working man with pride in his eyes. But when poverty hit us, it took more than our money. It stripped him of kindness, of patience, and most painfully, of love for his own family. Every empty meal, every unpaid bill became a reason for him to raise his voice at my mother. His anger grew into a habit, and soon it was no longer just words. It was cruelty. I am Maria, his daughter. I watched helplessly as my mother endured his temper, her face silent but her heart breaking. She was gentle, soft-spoken, and carried the family's pain in silence. And me? I carried hers. I would often give up my share of food for my younger siblings, pretending I wasn't hungry. My mother's tears were always hidden, but I could see them in her eyes. The night that changed everything is carved into my memory like a scar. My father's voice roared louder than the storm outside. His words struck like knives. "Get out of my house!" he screamed at my mother. He didn't care that she had nowhere to go, that she had given him everything, that she had raised his children in love despite his anger. He shoved her toward the door like she was nothing more than a burden. I wanted to scream, to fight him, to protect her. But I stood frozen, my hands trembling. The image of my mother standing in the rain, helpless and broken, will never leave me. That was the moment something inside me hardened. I knew I couldn't stay. I knew if I did, his cruelty would devour me too. So the next morning, I packed what little I had. I kissed my mother's hands, her tears soaking my face, and promised her I would find a way to make things right. I promised her that our story would not end in despair. Without looking back at the house that had become a prison, I stepped into the unknown city. It was the hardest decision I ever made, but deep in my heart, I carried a fire, the determination to build a new life for us. And one day, to make my father regret everything he had done. The city greeted me with noise, chaos, and a kind of loneliness I had never known before. I had always lived with my family, surrounded by familiar voices and faces, even if those voices often carried anger. But here, I was just another stranger in a crowd of thousands, a girl with nothing but a small bag and a heavy heart. At first, survival was all I could think about. I didn't have money, nor did I know anyone here who could help me. Nights were the hardest. I would sit on a bench, clutching my bag tightly, staring at the stars hidden behind city lights, and whispering to myself, "Maria, you cannot give up. Not for you. Not for your mother." Work came slowly. I started with little things. Cleaning dishes in a small restaurant, sweeping floors, serving food. It was exhausting, humiliating at times, but every coin I earned was like a small weapon I was sharpening for the future. While others saw me as just another poor girl struggling to make ends meet, I saw myself as a fighter in training. There were days when hunger gnawed at me, when the cold nights wrapped around me like punishment, and when my body begged me to stop. But in those moments, I remembered my mother's face the night she was thrown out. Her tears gave me strength. Her silence gave me courage. As weeks turned into months, I began to learn the rhythm of the city. I found small kindness in strangers, an old woman who gave me bread one morning, a shopkeeper who let me rest outside his store, a restaurant owner who noticed my determination and offered me extra shifts. These small acts of humanity kept me going when despair tried to crush me. I started saving. Every coin, every dollar I could spare went into a little box I kept hidden. It wasn't much, but it was hope. And with each passing day, I imagined the day I would return for my mother. I imagined bringing her away from my father's cruelty, showing her that her sacrifices were not in vain. But life in the city wasn't only about hard work. It was also about learning who I was without my family. I began to see strength in myself I didn't know existed. I wasn't just a daughter or a victim of my father's anger. I was Maria, a woman building her own path, no matter how painful. Still, in the quiet of the night, revenge whispered in my ears. Not the kind of revenge that comes from hatred alone, but the kind that demanded justice. My father had chosen another woman, another life, and discarded us like we were nothing. I vowed in those lonely hours that one day he would feel the same emptiness he had forced upon us. I didn't know when or how, but I knew the time would come. And when it did, I would not just survive, I would triumph. Years passed, but the fire inside me never dimmed. What began as survival slowly grew into ambition. I was no longer the broken girl who cried herself to sleep on park benches. I was stronger now, hardened by struggle, sharpened by every insult life had thrown at me. I worked 2, sometimes 3 jobs. By day, I stood behind the counter of a small bakery, kneading dough until my arms ached. By night, I cleaned offices, scrubbing the floors of people who never even noticed me. On weekends, I delivered food, pedaling through stormy nights, drenched in rain, yet refusing to stop. Each drop of sweat, each blister on my hands, became a silent promise to myself. This pain will not be wasted. The money I saved began to grow. Slowly at first, just enough to rent a tiny room, then enough to send a little help to my mother in secret. Every time I sent her money, I imagined her smile, her relief. I never told her how much I sacrificed because I wanted her to feel cared for, not burdened, but my dreams were larger than just survival. I wanted freedom. I wanted security. And more than anything, I wanted revenge, not by violence, but by proving that I could build a life so strong, so unshakable, that my father and his new wife would have no choice but to face the weight of their cruelty. One day, while working at the bakery, the owner fell ill and had to step away. He trusted me to handle the business in his absence. It was my chance. I worked tirelessly, welcoming customers with warmth, making sure every loaf of bread was perfect, and even introducing small changes that people loved. The bakery's sales grew, and soon, the owner offered me a permanent managerial position. That was my first real step forward. With that position came stability, and with stability came opportunity. I enrolled in evening business classes, determined to learn everything about management, finance, and entrepreneurship. It wasn't easy. After long shifts, my body begged for rest, but my mind was hungry. I sat in those classrooms, sometimes half asleep, yet my determination kept me awake. People began to notice me. They saw not just a worker, but a leader. And for the first time in years, I felt a sense of pride, not because someone gave it to me, but because I earned it with my own hands. But while my life in the city was slowly transforming, I never forgot the past. I would sometimes hear news about my father and his second wife. They had sold the family home, spending the money carelessly, living as if their wealth would never end. But I knew greed always devours itself. I waited. Every night I reminded myself, patience is also a form of revenge. And as the years rolled by, I began to see my hard work shaping into something greater. My savings turned into investments. My knowledge turned into ideas. I started to plan for my own business, one that would not just give me independence, but also prove that no betrayal could break me. My name is Maria, and I was no longer just surviving. I was preparing. Preparing for the day when I would stand tall, not just for myself, but for my mother, against the very man who had abandoned us. The day of reckoning didn't come with noise or thunder. It came quietly, the way winter sneaks into autumn. My life, built with sweat and sleepless nights, stood strong while my father's world, tied to his second wife, crumbled like dry bread. By this time, I was no longer the broken girl who had left her home in tears. I had transformed into a woman of strength, the owner of a successful bakery chain, a respected name in the city. I was known for resilience, but deep inside, I carried a scar that never healed, the betrayal of my father. One evening, after closing the shop, I heard news that made me stop in my tracks. Your father and his wife are living in poverty now. They lost everything. I couldn't believe it at first. The same man who once expelled my mother and me without a second thought, the same woman who encouraged him to destroy our lives, were now begging to survive. Their property had been sold, their so-called friends had abandoned them, and even her own relatives had turned their backs. Days later, I saw him. My father, once tall, proud, and arrogant, was sitting on the side of the road begging for coins. His clothes were torn, his face hollow, his hands trembling. Beside him sat the woman who had taken our home, now too weak to even speak. I froze. A storm of emotions rushed through me: anger, sadness, pity, and the taste of revenge. For years, I had dreamt of this moment. For years, I wanted him to feel what we felt. And now he was living that pain in the open for the whole world to see. He looked up, and for a moment, our eyes met. I saw recognition. His lips quivered. Maria, my daughter. That word, daughter, stabbed me like a knife. Where was that father when I needed him most? Where was he when I cried myself to sleep? Where was he when my mother was thrown out, humiliated, abandoned? But instead of shouting, instead of letting rage consume me, I stood tall. I looked him in the eye and said, I am not the weak girl you abandoned. I am the woman who survived because you threw me out. He begged for food, for shelter. His wife lowered her head in shame, unable to meet my eyes. I took a deep breath and told him, this is not my revenge. This is life's revenge. You destroyed your own family, and now you are alone. What you sowed, you are reaping. And I walked away. That night, as I sat with my mother and shared dinner with her, I realized something important. Revenge isn't about hurting the people who hurt you. True revenge is building a life so strong, so powerful, that those who wronged you can only watch and regret. My story was never about my father. It was about me, Maria, the girl he tried to break, but who rose from the ashes stronger than ever. This could happen in any family. Do you think Maria did right by walking away instead of helping her father? Share your thoughts in the comments. And tell me, what city are you watching this from and what time is it right now?